Imagine that we are all floating down a river together. We're all in our own boats. Maybe some of us are paired up in twos or maybe threes in little boats. But we have our own boats and we're all kind of floating down this river together. For the last little while, the river has been quite deep and broad, which means it's a nice, big, mature, flowing river that sometimes it flows faster and there are currents that go this way and that way, and sometimes you need to pick up your paddle and straighten out your course, and sometimes there might be a sandbar you go around. But for the most part, we've been all together flowing down this nice big broad river in sunny days and rainy days and windy days and icy days. For the most part, we're just going down this river and everything has been largely stable with a little bit of back and forth and a little bit of a few surprises here and there. Now imagine you look up and you see that things are not going to remain this way, right? There is a change ahead. Imagine perhaps that there is a big island in the river, and the river is about to go in two different directions, two arms of the river going around this very large island. The fork in the river, the fork in the road, the fork in the river. And some of us are going to go to the left, and some of us are going to go to the right. And imagine the different ways that you might choose your course, right? Perhaps you just leave it up to fate and destiny and you just lay back in your boat and let the current take you and you will find your way. Perhaps you have an instinct inside about which way is right for you and you feel a very, very, very strong call. Maybe it's inexplicable, unexplainable. You know that one of these particular ways is the way for you to go. And some people might agree with you. Some people might tell you you're making the good decision. Other people might tell you, no, that's not the way. You should come meet with me. You should come this way. And you could have all kinds of conversations and you could do all kinds of things to help you make your decision. However, all of that is kind of up in the mind. All of that doesn't really actually help you. The only thing that you need to know is that you have an instinct about which path is for you. And if that instinct is very strong, you might need to really put your oar in and paddle to get yourself down the path that you really want to go down. Maybe it's not even a want, because maybe if you want to take the right path down the river, perhaps there's even some discomfort there. Perhaps you have friends that are going down the other fork in the river. Perhaps it looks like there's more rapids in this direction. Perhaps it looks a little more rocky. Perhaps the weather looks bad. Perhaps there's people going down that arm of the river that maybe you don't like them very much. And yet you know that that is the path for you. So even as you paddle in that direction, it might feel like a little bit of a strange choice, and yet you know it is the choice for you. Now imagine that it's not as simple as just two paths down the river. This one river, you realize quickly that, it's not actually just a fork of two. It's not just two paths. What's actually happening is that this river has reached its delta, right? The river delta, where now, oh my goodness, the river can no longer maintain its shape. It is getting close to the ocean. It is in the delta that has been built up over many, 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 many years. And now that river is spreading out into dozens or hundreds or thousands of different pathways, and it is becoming a labyrinth and a maze. And there are some large, strong streams going through the delta, and there are many little dead ends. There's marshland, wetlands, bogs. There are whirlpools. There are paths that diverge and then meet again. There are paths that look like they'll meet again and yet actually divide and separate for a very long time. And yet, of course, the thing to keep in mind about the river delta, with all of its twists and turns and all of its various pathways, is that all of those pathways, all of that water ultimately reaches the ocean. Some pathways will take you more directly there. Others, you might get caught up in some eddies or some whirlpools, or you might stagnate in a swamp for a while, but ultimately all of that water does eventually return to the ocean. And you ultimately, all of us, everyone, we all meet again in the ocean. We're all going to the same place. We're all going there. But we have these different pathways that are coming up ahead of us. And there is definitely this energy of division, like the ringing of the division bell has begun. There is a little bit of energy of division. But of course, with every division, there is also a reunification, or a new meeting, right? Many meetings, many meetings, because as we divide and separate and have these divisions, we are also going to be meeting up with those that we have not seen in quite some time. There's going to be reunification and returns, and also new meetings of new people, new faces, new energy, new experiences. So there is a balance of the parting of ways that is balanced out with the reunification. That is possible because of divisions that happened in the past, right? You were divided from some people in the past. Now it is time to be reunified with some of those, perhaps, and it is absolutely time to meet new souls, new beings, and make new connections. It is this time of diversification, of selecting your resonance pathways. You are selecting your own resonance pathways. And if we want to keep this easier to talk about, we can just stick with the analogy of there's two forks in the road, right? You can go left or you can go right. To keep it simple like this, we might say that the left-hand path might feel like you can just flow into it. And as you go down that path, or those who go down that arm of the river might take a more passive role for a while. They might go through a phase or an era where they're just laying back in their boat, maybe sometimes subtly correcting course and balancing out their boat, but largely going with the flow and seeing what comes and passively experiencing the flow down the river. We can imagine that those taking the right-hand path might have to pick up their paddle, and they might have to look around them and navigate the rushing river. There might be rapids, there might be rocks, and you might have to be sitting upright and alert and making careful and precise movements. They might have to be much more active and assertive. Two different pathways. Of course, it's not that simple as just two pathways. That is just a simplification for communication and for ease of digestion by the human mind. Really, it is a infinity of different labyrinthine pathways, but the energy that has been brewing inside of you, right? The energy that has been brewing inside of you, you really want to feel into over the past year. Whenever you see this message, right? Over the past year, has your energy been changing at all? Have you been noticing something kindling inside of you, right? Perhaps not. Perhaps you're feeling same as you have, and nothing is feeling like it's shifting and nothing is feeling different. And if that's the case, then that is going to tell you something, right? That is going to give you some of the information that you need here. That's going to clue you into what type of path you are selecting, because the energy that has been brewing inside of you, your own internal energy, that is what is selecting the pathway ahead of you. That is this resonance pathways, because the energy that's inside of you, that is aligning you with the path, right? That is aligning you with your path. But if you've been feeling a shift in your energy, perhaps you're feeling like becoming more active, like you're waking up into your body, like your body is filling with energy, and like you're wondering, what have I been doing? What have I been doing? I feel like I've been lost in a fog, and I have been passive, and I have been sleepy, and I have been tired. And perhaps that phase was beneficial and useful in many ways, but now I feel like I'm ready to pick up my oar and to be more assertive and be more active. And that is going to tell you something about your path, because that energy is kindling inside of you for a reason, because that pathway is, you're aligning with it, right? You're aligning with it. Perhaps your energy is a little bit all over the place and you're as yet uncertain where you are going. That in and of itself can be part of the experience. That can be one of the pathways. You can become lost in the fog or lost in the mists, and you can kind of go around in circles for a little bit. And if that is you, don't worry. That can be part of the path, right? That can be part of the path. And all of these different packages of resonance that you're experiencing, they are all temporary. They are all part of a cycle. None are particularly better than the other. Yes, you will inevitably prefer some experiences more than others. And yet none of them need to be judged as good or bad. They are all simply how you are vibrating at this time. And we could discuss how you can lean into and tweak and cultivate the vibration that would be more preferable to you. But let's set that aside for the moment. Okay. We have cycles, cycles with the hair, right? Cycles with the hair. Precisely. You'll want to think about, where are you in this cycle? And the thing is, though, you are experiencing not just one cycle. It is cycles within cycles within cycles. So you have a daily cycle and a monthly cycle and a yearly cycle and larger soul cycles that go over many lifetimes. And you have your Jupiter returns and your Saturn returns, and you have galactic cycles and enormous cycles that are beyond the imagination of the human mind. So all of these different cycles, are you in the waning part of the cycle? Are you in the dark part of the cycle, the nighttime part of the cycle, the new moon part of the cycle? Are you gaining momentum? Are you just beginning to wax? Are you culminating? Is this a full moon? Is this a moment of climax? Or are you somewhere in the middle where you have been building, and you're gaining momentum, and yet you still have so much farther left to go because you're just getting going, right? You're just getting going, and there is so much more to come. There is likely to be some perhaps strange feeling experiences that you might be having with others, where perhaps you have been, for a while, you have been in the same part of the cycle with someone or many people. It could be a whole group. It could be a whole very large collective, like social, societal level group. It could be something very large. It could be a few people. It could be one other person. Perhaps you have been in the same part of the cycle as they were, and yet now you feel like you're moving on. You're moving to the next part of the cycle. It is your time to continue along this path, or you're selecting a new path. You're going left and they're going right, or vice versa. The paths are diverging. It might feel strange. It might feel strange to suddenly have feelings of a loss of resonance, perhaps. A loss of resonance, feeling like what used to resonate no longer resonates, or that connection that used to be there just doesn't seem to be there in the same way. Perhaps there can even be feelings of sudden dissonance where there is an active feeling of clashing. And of course, what you do with those sensations are up to you. Just because the resonance doesn't feel the same as it used to, or just because there is some conflict or some dissonance, that doesn't mean that you need to part ways or separate. That can actually be the call to become closer, right? That can be the catalyst to become even closer. Think about romantic relationships. Easy example. A lot of the time when a couple gets into a really big argument, a very big conflict, perhaps some kind of crisis even that might go on for multiple days, that is a choice point, and different couples at different times will make different choices about what that conflict means for them, right? Does that mean that this is the time that they part ways? Or is that conflict the moment where they come into such deeper understanding of each other that after they resolve the conflict by choosing to hold themselves together in the discomfort and the friction and the tension of the conflict, and they continually choose to be together while they get to the bottom of the conflict and come into that deeper understanding of each other, which then dissolves the conflict and gets them to the other side of what is on the other side of the tension. Well, now the relationship could be stronger and better and deeper and more loving than ever and filled with such profound understanding. So again, some will have experiences where the dissonance might be the moment where they part ways. Others might have the experience where the dissonance is actually when they come closer together. To the sea, because that is where we are all going, even if the ringing of the division bell has begun. Pink Floyd. We are all flowing to the sea, and this also represents those who are either continuing on in a phase that is more passive and receptive and flowing, or those who are now ready to experience more receptivity and more flow. But that will not be everyone's path. Soulmates fell right out. Soulmates fell right out. If you're wondering, no, I did not actually intend any of this to be a romantic reading, but of course it will resonate that way for someone. By the book, this was trying to come out earlier. Look at these elephants, right? Look at the imagery here of these elephants all in a line, marching across the desert. This is in contrast to the lady in her bathtub floating on the ocean. The lady in her bathtub floating on the ocean is in that place of receptivity and passivity and flow. These elephants are doing what they need to do to get to where they need to go. Presumably, these elephants need to cross the desert in order to reach the oasis, the watering hole, or to where the food is, right? They need to get there, and they need to be active, and they need to go step by step, and they need to keep at it and perhaps be persistent in their efforts to get to where they need to go, right? It's a completely different experience. It is a much more assertive situation, and there is a feeling here of it could feel like a return of logic, or a return of the mind, or a return of rules and discipline. Even doesn't have to be extreme. It could be committing yourself to a new exercise routine, and being committed to that routine. It can be something like that. But this is very much a contrast of where these two energies are in the cycle. And it's very interesting to read this energy because I might have to have a return to pick a card readings, because all of you who are watching this, over however many years it is that the views trickle in, you're all in very different places in the cycle. You're all in very different places of the cycle. So, and yet I can feel all of you're all here, all in one group. So it's very interesting to read. That is actually quite special, because we have all of these different pockets of resonance, all of these different vibrations, all of these different parts of the cycle are here represented right now all together in this packet of energy that I get to read. It's very interesting. And yet after this moment, there's going to be a dispersion, right? We must disperse as we go down different paths in order to explore new experiences. The importance, it cannot be overemphasized that it is always just a part of the cycle. Every different phase of this experience is temporary, and we all ultimately experience every part of the cycle. Loving compassion with the lovers. Loving compassion with the lovers. We have two dolphins playing with the heart in the middle, and they are jumping up out of the earth, and you can even see the flower of life, sacred geometry on the planet down there. The lovers. Also, especially with the lovers and the soulmates, it should be noted here that when you find resonance and connection with somebody who is opposite from you, vibrationally speaking, that is the energy of the lovers, the soulmates, the twin flames, right? The divine counterparts, however you want to look at it. That is that yin-yang energy. And that is something quite special. It is not something that we experience all of the time with everyone. Think about how we normally seek out connection. How most of us normally, most of the time, prefer connection. We prefer people who are matching our vibration, who are thinking like us, right? Like-minded individuals. People who we share interests with. People who are likely to agree with us, or at least to agree to disagree, right? We're usually looking for sameness, right? For sameness. And when we encounter that energy that is the opposite, we we usually, most of us, most of the time, experience that as conflict. And yet, there is a third opportunity here. It's when you discover your perfect opposite and actually find that foundational vibration that you share with them. Despite all of your differences, despite all of your disagreements, despite the fact that you seem on the surface to have nothing in common whatsoever, you discover that you have something so much in common that it transcends all of those other petty considerations, right? That it makes all of those differences and those disagreements and those conflicts, it makes them seem like crumbs in the wind, because you are connecting on a level that is so much deeper, or perhaps so much higher. It is a transcendent connection that is not blind to your differences. It is not blind to your disagreements. It is not blind to the friction or the tension. It just knows that those things, they do not hold a candle to the truly foundational, transcendent, soul level connection and resonance that you share. It is truly connecting on a completely new level that you maybe have not experienced before. Maybe you have experienced it in certain types of connections, perhaps with family, but maybe you've never experienced it with a lover. Perhaps you've experienced it with a lover, but you've never experienced it with the collective, with thousands or even millions of people. So all of this adds up to this fact that, fact is not the right word, but I'm using that as a figure of speech, right? As an artifact of the English language. All of this might be rather confusing to judge or to understand or to decide if you're trying to understand and judge and decide these things from the level of the human mind, especially if the human mind is still operating in the kind of older, habitual, traditional paradigm. Be prepared and be open to almost anything, but also know, where do you draw your personal and private line in the sand, right? Being open to entertaining any possibility. This is very personal. This is about finding your place within this, right? Finding your place within the flowing receptive passivity and within the active assertive sides of this equation. How open do you want to be? How fixed and focused do you want to be? You want to be largely open to almost anything, and yet there are certain things that you will not accept, right? You will set your boundary and you will draw your line in the sand. It is the feeling of the vast majority of us will not go 100% to either extreme, right? Most of us will be, if we take this spectrum from negative 100 to positive 100, most of us will be kind of clustered around here in the middle, right? And it peters out towards the edges. Extremely few people will be 100% on one end and 100% on the other end. And most of us floating around in the middle here will be finding and discovering and fluctuating through what's working for us, right? And also making that discovery in relationship with the external environment, because remember that we are floating in a river. And even though there is this kind of fork in the road ahead of us, and you can decide to just see where the river takes you, or you can decide to put your oar in and paddle, paddle, paddle until you get down the path that you choose, you still don't really know what's coming up down the river. The weather can change, the river can change. There's unforeseen terrain ahead. And aside from those moments when you pick your path, you can't actually snap your fingers and transform the external reality. You cannot snap your fingers and force the river to be other than it is. So you are subject to the river, and as you are in the river, you do what you can to the extent that you desire and that you can to adjust and curate your experience of going down this river. But you are only in control of your responses and your choices. You are not in control with what is actually appearing in front of you. So this is an experience that you are having in relation to the river itself, right? It is happening in relation to the river itself. You got the love. This is the Hadarian card bringing up codependency and boundaries. Codependency and boundaries. That definitely belongs over here. As I was just talking about boundaries, right? I was just talking about setting the boundaries in your line in the sand. And that's also just knowing when to part ways. It doesn't have to be a big boundary setting event. It can simply be recognizing, this isn't doing it for me anymore. I'm going to go do something else. And over here, we have the wheel of life. So the wheel bringing up the cycles within cycles within cycles. And in it, but not of it. This absolutely belongs over here with this more active and assertive branch, this more active and assertive pathway. And for those of you who are resonating more over here, or you feel like you might be kindling this type of energy, maybe you're just beginning to go in this direction. Maybe you're waking up from your long sleep and your long rest and your long healing, and you're kindling yourself up to go in this direction. This is the energy of culmination. This is actually what I wanted to talk about this whole reading, and we're only getting into it now. This energy of culmination. This period in your life, something is culminating, and that is truly the best word I can come up with here. We could talk about the ending of a cycle, a conclusion, something that you're finishing up, something that you're wrapping up. But it is less about things ending and more about things coming to fruition, coming to completion, coming to maturity, culminating. And it does all culminate in something, some experience. And what I have been sensing in my own life is this long, drawn out kind of culminating experiences. This long, drawn out experiences of this arc of culmination, if I can call it that, an arc of culmination, where things are maturing and not exactly ending. I feel like calling it an ending would be very short-sighted and perhaps a little negative. It's not that things are ending, it's that as things mature and culminate, they are changing and shifting. And these energies will not be lost, but they will perhaps take a detour from you for a while. They might take a different path and then come right back to you, in some amount of time. It is more about certain relationships changing or evolving, but through a process of maturation and growth, right? You can think about how some of the endings in your life are actually the result of maturation and growth. Maturation and growth. Not a severing, right? It's not a severing. So often we think of endings as something being severed or something having been lost, but it's not that. Not what this is. This is changes coming out through maturation and growth, and it is very, very healthy. It is a very, very healthy type of shift. Like healthy in that way that feels healthy, right? Healthy in the way that you really will ultimately like understand why it is healthy. You'll feel it. And you might have the graduation goggles. You might have the graduation goggles. You might have your moments of nostalgia. You might cry happy tears that are tinged with grief. But there really is a feeling of the dawning of the new era of your life. And this comes out here with the golden children, inner child, tenderness, innocence, and rare gifts. This card comes out, to me, I usually read this as, the golden children might mean something to you specifically. I think of this as like the golden guides, right? The golden guides. It doesn't have to be that. This card in particular, right? The author of this deck sees this as a childlike, youthful kind of energy. When this card comes out, for me, it means that, but also more than that. Those of you who've heard me talk about the golden guides and everything that they kind of resonate with, how they resonate, and even what they stand for to an extent, it's that energy coming through. It's the energy of the golden guides coming through, and they are a galvanizing, more active and more assertive type of energy, but they are also very complex and very, 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 very human. And as I'm always emphasizing about them, is that they are fully whole and fully integrated. So in that they are not separate from sorrow. They are not separate from pain. They have the full spectrum of the human emotional body, including those emotions that we find so challenging. They have those integrated inside of them. So even though they are these source level beings, they reside in the golden light, they reside in the central sun that is outside of this universe, and yet they are fully complete with all of the intimacies and intricacies and nuances of the human emotional experience. So it is quite complex, but this is also coming through as your connection to source energy. And then the final card here in the middle. This brings us full circle to the beginning of the reading. The portal card, right? Doors are opening. You decide. Rewards and wild card. There's a portal opening in front of you, right? We talked about it in terms of left and right down the path. The river delta, where there are a whole labyrinth of ways for you to go. You can also think about it as this is your portal moment. This is the portal opening in front of you. And you do not know what's on the other side of the portal. You do not know. You cannot see. All you have to go on is your vibration, is how you are feeling. So feel inside of yourself for what energy is gaining momentum. What is the momentum that is building inside of you? Perhaps it is just waking up and just getting going, right? Perhaps your momentum hasn't had its coffee yet. But that seed of momentum, if you nurture it, and if you water it, and if you feed it, and if you give it the sunlight it needs to grow, it can grow rapidly and it can propel you forward, right? It can grow inside of you. What energy are you feeding inside of yourself? What energy are you focusing on inside of yourself? What energy are you leaning into? What energy do you want more of? What experience do you want more of? What do you want to grow inside of yourself? That's for each and every one of us to consider personally and privately. What energy are we feeding inside of ourselves? What aspects of ourselves are we nourishing? What aspects of ourselves are we focusing on? What aspects of reality, of truth, of the universe? Whatever it is that you are feeding, whatever it is that you are nourishing, whatever it is that you are helping along, whatever it is that you are focusing on, that's what's going to grow, and that's what you're going to get more of if you continue to propel that energy, that emotion, that feeling, that intention forward. So consider your intentions more than your actions, right? Consider your intentions more than your actions. When you begin something, when you do something, what is your intention? What is it? What is your why? What is your reason for doing that? Because your intentions and your reasons and your whys, that is part of the fuel that you use to feed your internal energy, and the fuel that you put into your own internal fire will change the color of your flame, and that will change the nature of your light, and that will shape what you experience when you step through this portal. You decide. You decide. You decide, right? So, happy portal moment, everyone. Sending you so much love and light, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.